Life in the 1950s by Lalit Gupta. Table of Contents. A Booming Economy. Page 4. The Car Culture. Page 6. Work and Home. Page 8. TV and Family Life. Page 10. Rock and Roll. Page 13. What do the 1950s make you think of? TV shows like I Love Lucy might come to mind. You might recall rock and roll stars like Elvis Presley. Perhaps you picture a girl wearing a poodle skirt or a boy in rolled-up jeans. All of these things were part of the 1950s. However, life in the 1950s was not all fun and games. Americans worried about nuclear war. They also worried about fitting in and being normal. Minority groups faced discrimination. The 1950s had its problems, just like any other decade. Still, many people remember it fondly. Let's take a closer look. "3D movies thrilled American audiences in the 1950s. A booming economy. World War II ended in 1945. For almost 4 years, America had been deprived of many comforts. Now Americans were eager to spend the money they had saved. Many people used their wealth in pursuit of a lifestyle called the American Dream. A big part of this dream was owning a house. Before the 1950s, a young married couple was likely to move into a small apartment. Now, Americans wanted their own houses, and many could afford them. Most new houses were built in suburbs. These were new towns built near cities. People who lived in suburbs could drive to their city jobs. The quiet streets with green lawns and neat rows of houses seemed like the perfect place to raise a family. A typical suburban street in Fairfax, Delaware. A builder named William Levitt led the movement to create suburbs. He employed new methods to build houses quickly and cheaply. A basic house had a kitchen, a living room, and 2 bedrooms. It was just right for a young family, and it cost less than $8,000. Other builders followed Levitt's lead. Soon people all over the nation were moving out of cities and into the suburbs. New housing construction. This graph shows the 1950s housing boom. How many new homes were built in 1950? The car culture. People in cities often walk or take a bus or train to get around. In the 1950s, Americans who had moved to the suburbs needed cars. Most did not mind, though. Owning a car was another part of the American dream. Cars allowed people to go wherever they wanted, whenever they wanted. Americans also loved their style and luxury. Some cars had features modeled on airplanes, like tail fins and curved windshields. Radios and air conditioning made long drives comfortable. In 1956, the U.S. government passed the Interstate Highway Act. This law called for the building of 41,000 miles of new highways. These roads made driving across the country much easier. Americans could move around the country more freely. New businesses were created to meet the needs of drivers. These included motel chains and fast food restaurants. People in suburbs drove to shopping malls instead of going to downtown stores. Many local shops went out of business. Public transportation, such as buses and subways, suffered with fewer paying passengers. Suburban families used their cars to take vacations. They visited national parks and places such as Disneyland, which opened in 1955. More cars on the roads meant more air pollution. Thousands of Americans died in car crashes each year. How cars changed America. America's car culture had many effects, both good and bad. For example, Americans could move around the country more freely. New businesses were created to meet the needs of drivers. These included motel chains and fast food restaurants. People in suburbs drove to shopping malls instead of going to downtown stores. Many local shops went out of business. Public transportation, such as buses and subways, suffered with fewer paying passengers. Suburban families used their cars to take vacations. They visited national parks and places such as Disneyland, which opened in 1955. More cars on the roads meant more air pollution. Thousands of Americans died in car crashes each year. This 1950s car has sleek tail fins. Work and home. While suburban men drove their cars to work each day, their wives often stayed home to take care of the house and children. Many women did have jobs outside the home. However, the happy homemaker was the ideal seen in ads and on TV. Women felt pressured to conform to this ideal. Homemakers did have some help from American businesses. Every year, miraculous new products came on the market. Washing machines, refrigerators, blenders, and other appliances made household chores easier. Men were pressured to conform to other ideals. Many worked for large companies. These companies were not looking for creative thinkers. They wanted their workers to be loyal and cooperative. Most workers tried to fit in and play by the rules. Ads like this one sold products to make life easier. They also sold an ideal of family life. Bert the Turtle. In the 1950s, both the United States and the Soviet Union had many nuclear bombs. Americans feared they might be attacked. The Soviets would be the culprit. Everyone, including children, needed to be prepared. The government created a friendly cartoon mentor for children. He was called Bert the Turtle. Bert taught children to protect themselves in case of nuclear attack. If they heard a loud noise or saw a flash of light, they should get down on the ground. They should crawl under a desk or table. They should cover their heads with their hands. Adults approached the topic of nuclear war more grimly. Some built fallout shelters in their basements or backyards. People could stay there a few days or weeks until it was safe to come out. A fallout shelter offered a place to sleep, canned food, and medical supplies. TV and family life. Before World War II, there were few TV sets. However, the number increased rapidly in the 1950s. See the graph on page 11. By 1959, 9 out of 10 American families had a television. Families spent less time listening to the radio. They went to fewer movies. Instead, they watched TV for news and entertainment. They loved comedies, police shows, and westerns. However, television in the 1950s did not reflect the lives of all Americans. The people on TV were nearly all white. When an African American appeared at all, he or she usually played a servant. Other minority groups were also misrepresented, or simply missing. Lucille Ball had to convince TV executives to let her Cuban-American husband star with her in I Love Lucy. The show became a huge hit. The first TV dinners. After Thanksgiving in 1953, a food company had 520,000 pounds of frozen turkey left over. To use it up, they invented the TV dinner. A tray with 3 sections was filled with turkey, mashed potatoes, and a vegetable. People could simply pop these meals in the oven. No need for real cooking. Americans loved this idea. In 1954, the company sold about 25 million TV dinners. Many families ate the meals while watching their favorite TV shows. By 1960, TV dinners included a dessert, too. U.S. households with TV sets. Based on the graph, how many more households had TV sets in 1960 than in 1950? A writer remembers the 50s. Historian Doris Kearns Goodwin is an expert on U.S. presidents. She is also a child of the 1950s. Her memoir, Wait Till Next Year, describes many events of the decade and how they affected her. 12-year-old Goodwin lived in a New York suburb. She was a fan of the Brooklyn Dodgers. Many of her classmates supported the New York Yankees. In 1955, the Dodgers and the Yankees faced off in the World Series. In school each day, Goodwin and her friends listened to the games on portable radios. Each game was fiercely contested. After 6 games, the series was tied at 3 games each. No one could concentrate on scholastic topics, so Goodwin's principal let the whole school listen to the final game together. When the Dodgers won, Brooklyn exploded in happy tumult. Thousands of fans danced in the streets. At the Bossert Hotel, the team had a victory party. Several players, including Jackie Robinson, came out to thank the fans for their support. It was a night that Goodwin would never forget. Jackie Robinson signs autographs for eager fans. Rock and roll. In the early 1950s, a new form of music called rock and roll developed. It grew from other kinds of American music, including blues, gospel, rhythm and blues, country and western. A young singer named Elvis Presley combined all these musical styles. He recorded his first single in 1954. The song was called That's All Right. He learned the song from an African-American blues singer named Arthur Big Boy Crudup. Because Elvis was white, he could make the song popular with a white audience. Elvis sang the song Jailhouse Rock in the 1957 movie of the same name. Teenagers loved rock and roll. Soon many performers, both black and white, were making rock and roll records. African Americans often did not get credit for the music they created. Only later did people recognize all that they had done. Now you know a little more about the 1950s. Some parts of this decade were exciting and fun. Others were unfair or even scary. If you could go back in time and visit the 1950s, would you go? Jumping rope was a popular pastime in the 1950s. Responding. Target vocabulary. Word builder. What words could you use to express the same idea as mentor? Copy this word web, then add more words that have the same meaning as mentor. Write about it. Text to world. Suppose someone from the 1950s could travel to the present time. What might this person find new and confusing? Write a brochure to help this person adjust. Use at least 2 words from the word builder. Target vocabulary. Contested. Culprit. Deprived. Employed. Grimly. Mentor. Miraculous. Pursuit. Scholastic. Tumult. Target strategy. Infer. Predict. Use text clues to figure out what the author means or what might happen in the future. Word teaser. Remove the prefix and the suffix from this word, and you'll get something you want to pass.